Hello, and welcome to another episode of Strange Dominions. I am your host, Octavian Graves. On tonight's episode, we speak with author, magician, and teacher, and all-around great human being, Jack Grayle. This will be Jack's third time on the podcast. Tonight, we speak on his new class, PGM 2, The Kingdom. We also talk about his first class, PGM 1, 50 Rites for 50 Nights, as well as his other classes, including Hail Hecate and many others. We also discuss new books he is publishing through Grayle Press, including Thai Occult, 2, Eo Typhon, and many more. If you have seen something strange or unusual, such as a cryptid, spirit, UFO, or anything in between, please send us an email at strangedominionspodcast@gmail.com, and we would love to have you on the show. And now for our interview with Jack Grayle. All right, tonight we are speaking with Jack Grayle, publisher, author, magician, teacher. How are you doing? It is so good to have you back on the show.
Hey, it's good to see you, Octavian. I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Thank you for letting me be on it.
Of course. I was really eager to have you on it because this new project that you're announcing and talking about, it's really exciting. So wherever you want to start with it, please go right ahead.
Great. Some people may know I teach classes through the Blackthorn School. And one of the classes I've done that people seem to like the most is called PGM Praxis. And PGM is the Greco-Egyptian magical papyri, which is a series of ancient scrolls from about 1700 years ago, discovered from Egypt. And these are magical spells and stuff. So my old class, PGM Praxis, every single week we go through one spell throughout the whole course of the year. And I release videos sharing the spell. There's a PDF, and people, they try the spell, they share in a group their experiences, and it's really fun. Some of the spells to Anubis, some to Hecate, some to the solar gods, some to the gods of the underworld. It's just like a smorgasbord of magic.
You make it so accessible when a lot of people who read the Bet's version of the PGM, at first, they get very nervous and confused by its format, because it is confusing, but you make it very accessible.
It is. And here's why I did the class is because the PGM is special. It's not just any old book or set of documents. These aren't writings about magic from a novel or a Christian apologist or some historian or something like that. These are magic. This is an actual trove of magic spells. So if you want to see how people perform magic 2,000 years ago, this is it. And some of the spells even say, to my adept, do it this way. So they're written by an experienced magician, some of them to a client or to a mentee or to someone they're trying to help or another magician. So it's super cool to have the actual source material showing how magic works. But the trick is, a lot of it is dense, and there's so many of them. Oftentimes people start reading it, they're like, this is confusing. There's all this weird stuff. It's not intuitive. It doesn't look like what is going on. And so the point of the class was to curate 50 of the most doable, interesting spells to show people, look, this isn't just historical artifact. This magic works. You can perform it today. It doesn't matter your ethnicity. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your spiritual path. These spells have inherent power. And if you perform them, you will see the benefit, both externally and internally. And people's response to that class was off the hook. Like, they loved it. Like, it's cool. The magic works, first of all. It's really punchy, full of vivid imagery. It's lyrical, it's visceral, it's embodied, but it comes from a culture that's syncretic, like ours today. It was a mix of African, European, Persian, Jewish, Christian. It covered the gamut. And that's reflected in the magic. And people like that. They connect with it. And so what happened was that class is run for 9 cohorts, right? But people keep asking, like they're sad when it ends. A lot of people say, I wish there was more. I wish we could take it further. And it got me thinking. And I thought, I feel like doing it again. But this time I want to cover not only the best of the PGM spells we didn't cover in the last one. I want to cover the material before the PGM that informs it. And I want to cover some material after the PGM that the PG informs. So it's like taking a wider scope of magic to show like the PGM wasn't a one-off. It was a collection of spells. It was part of a continuum of magic through Egypt and North Africa, which was the heart of the magical world back in antiquity. So the goal was, first of all, expand the reach of it. And that allows for more diverse material. And part of the reward for that is not only to see how the Christian paradigm incorporated PGM, Egyptian magic, into it in the early days, which was really cool, when they intermixed Christian angels with pagan gods and things like that. You got a spell where Jesus sends scorpions to kill an enemy. Like there's fantastic stuff. And another spell to cure the scorpion stings when your foe sends them back at you. But also, I got excited because the real early stuff, I feel like it's something people need nowadays. Because the early stuff, and when I say early, thousands of years before the PGM, PGM's 1700 years old for us. These spells, the coffin text, the pyramid text, are thousands of years older than the PGM. So they're more ancient to the people of the PGM world than the PGM is to us. And they have a lot, I feel like, to tell us. Because these spells were literally written on the insides of pyramids, on the insides of coffins. And they are meant to grant godhood to the occupants of those coffins, to allow them, and they make their journey to the underworld, to be accepted as deities, as opposed to nameless, shapeless, voiceless shades that are meant to be beheaded in the underworld and their memory removed and their identity stripped from them and devoured by the creatures that exist in the Duat, the night side. And I began thinking, I was like, here's the deal. A lot of people today, their heads aren't so much on what happens to me after I die. They're having enough trouble while they're living now. Because one thing I notice is a consistent problem in my class. If people have one hurdle, it's feeling like they're worthy of doing the magic in the first place. It's not that the magic comes from Egypt. It's not that the magic requires this herb or that stone or whatever. It's because the magic, it doesn't follow a Christian paradigm of apologizing and begging. It follows a paradigm of commanding and compelling and adjuring with a sense of confidence and a sense of ownership in your own worth. And sometimes these spells will even say stuff like, I am Isis the Great, or I am Hermes Thoth, I am Helios. And people would balk at that. It was like seeing sprinters stop at a hurdle, and they would say, well, I don't really feel, it feels arrogant to say these words. I know I'm not Helios, so I don't feel like I can say that with. And I realized that there was a disconnect because these magicians saying the words back then, they weren't literally Helios either, but they were magical practitioners who were channeling a divine power in a way that transformed them. A circuit isn't the electricity, right? And these magicians are channeling the magic, which they called Heka, which is both magic and the god of magic. And so the idea was, I'm going to look at these ancient spells, coffin texts, pyramid texts, and find the ones and pick and choose and conflate and rearrange them into a series of workings that will allow a modern practitioner to own her magic, to own his authority, to own her sovereignty, to own his kingship or queenship over himself and the realm that he or she rules. And so that's why I'm really excited about this new class, because we incorporate these really ancient material in a way, not so much to protect us after we die, but to protect us while we're alive by allowing ourselves to own our godhood by these self-declarations that are so powerful. If you allow me, I was going to read you one of them. If you're yeah? Awesome. And so here's what you're listening to. As I read through the coffin texts, and again, these were literally texts written by Egyptian funerary artists and priests on coffins of people who were buried. It was meant to protect them by providing like a passport in the underworld that says this person isn't a nobody. This person is a somebody. This person is a brother and sister of the gods themselves. So welcome them into your company, gods and goddesses. They're worthy of you. They're not some nameless nobody who's meant to fade away to nothing. So I took these, and about every 20 pages of spells, I would edit them and pick the most meaningful parts and add them together in a collage. And I would write in here and there pieces to make them so they were coherent into a narrative that could be read by the ritualist. And the idea is you'd read at least one of these every month for 12 months in a ritual setting as a way to self-declare the sovereignty you have over the divinity in yourself, okay? Using literal images, literal phrases from a literal magic text from ancient Egypt, okay? So I'm going to read this one. This is one we'll do in the fourth week of the fourth one we'll do in the class. A few notes for anyone who doesn't know. There's a reference in here to the Duat. The Duat is the underworld. It was meant to be a dark and scary place where the sun had to travel every night and reemerge. So Duat is the underworld. Sobek is the crocodile-headed god, very powerful lord who was Epiphany, was the crocodile of the Nile. Neith and Nephthys are goddesses of the ancient Egyptian world. And we also have imagery such as that may come up, such as the word Heka, which means the natural magical force that flows through everything, including humans. If you have those concepts, then you should be able to handle this. So this is actually in two parts. The first part is a proclamation of the divinity of the person who reads it, the ritualist. The second part is like a banishment to spirits of the dead that might be haunting you or threatening you, okay? So here it is. This is an amalgam of the coffin text, which I've assembled, which would be one of the spells read by the ritualist. So here we go. Correct. I come in power. You gods, you spirits, you dead, who fill the sky and sea and earth, see me, surrounded by my servants, in full possession of my strength, capable of commanding many minions to do this task or that. A heavy slab dragged from here to the farthest plateau, they do it. A well dug for refreshment, a furrow plowed for food, a basket woven that I lose nothing on the journey. I say the word, and it is done. They rejoice to do it. They uplift me gladly, and gladly I receive their service. They know me, and I know them. Daily I bring forth the words of my mouth, using the Heka within my body, this body, which glitters with magic. No nets of the newly dead can capture it. No corpse hook can snare it. The darkness itself cannot darken it. In deepest Duat, I will fell Apep. That's the chaos serpent. I will glitter there like Sobek in the depths of the Nile, untouchable. And when I rise, it is effortless as a cobra rises. When I draw my bow, Neith draws it, not me. Of course, the arrow strikes home. Nephthys inflicts the wound, not me. Mortal every time. How can it be otherwise? I hear the speech of the gods, and I do what they do. Acclaim is mine, praise is mine, rejoicing is mine. Always and everywhere, they welcome me, because I am as they are. I am one of them, and forever. So that's the proclamation, right? And now here, if the person was suffering, they felt haunted, felt like there were parasitical spirits preying on them, they could read what I just read and add on this part, which is an exorcism of sorts. To do this, they would draw the eye of Horus on one hand, the Wajet eye, also called the sound eye, meaning it's whole, it's healthy, it's restored, it's magical. And they would burn something like asphotidia, some sort of smelly thing to dispel the bad spirit. And they would add this part, which again is taken from the coffin text, though heavily edited. They'll refer to fishers of men. These were considered not like the apostles in the Christian Gospels. Fishers of men in the Duat were demons that harvested human souls by netting them, spearing them, catching them with lines, and then devouring them, okay? Those are the fishers. So this is what the magical spell says to dismiss them. O fishers of men, you who cast your nets and drop your lines, and raise your spears to gather souls, you shall not gather me. Nothing is unknown to me. I know the secret names of all your vessels' parts, and I speak them now aloud. Its mooring post, the shank of Horus, its lashing ropes, the hand of Isis, its strong knots, the fingers of Nephthys, its long wood oar, the scepter of Ra, its tall white sails, the plumes of Horus, its sharp fish hooks, the spears of Set. Useless, all of them, against me. For I am the Nile fish that cannot be eaten. I avoid the net, the line, the spear. Ungraspable am I, and when grasped, I am thrown back immediately. Look up. I am above you now, the great one, the double lion whose form cannot be seen, the double lion whose voice cannot be heard. Those who exist see me clearly. Those who do not exist worship me. Those who are yonder give me praise. O fishermen of Abydos, you swallowers who crouch before the fiery ones, how can you grip a falcon 7 cubits long? You cannot. Look, in my hands I hold your net, your lines, your spears, your gutting knife. Look up with your broken eyes. Mine is the sound eye of Horus. Flee me, as the dead flee you, for I am not dead, nor will I be. Flee to him, that Lord you serve in vain. He cannot help. Behold, his heart is in my mouth. Those who exist see me clearly. Those who do not exist worship me. Those who are yonder give me praise. So that's it.
Absolutely beautiful. And I could absolutely see how helpful this would be. Yeah, especially the exorcism part. And I have had a couple instances. One of my favorite spells of all time is the Headless One. And a lot of people, whether they're part of the Golden Dawn tradition or not, they use the LBRP as sort of their daily banishing to cleanse everything. I've never done the LBRP. It's not something I'm super into. So I was using the Headless Rite as like a daily thing.
Yes.
I've had to stop this because a couple months ago, I did it for about a week straight. I come into my apartment and my roommates are screaming at me because there are flies all over my room. I go into my room. The entire wall was covered in flies. I've never eaten in there. I've never had left any food or drink or anything in that room.
That was what I was going to ask, whether you had the walls covered in Coke or something.
Yeah, no, they were perfectly clean. I never really spent a lot of time there because I was working so much, but I was doing the rituals in there. Yeah. And I had to put that down for a while. When I moved in here, I started doing it again as a daily thing. I don't know how this happened, but I come home from work one day. My neighbor knocks on my door very angrily. And I don't know how I missed it when I came in, but she says, your whole front of the house was on fire last night. We had to call the fire department. I was like, what do you mean?
What?
And she's like, the planters, your dirt planters on your porch, they were just on fire. A neighbor ran over and told me we had to call the fire department to put it out.
What?
Yeah. I have no idea how it happened, but...
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I have to be very careful about which exorcism I'm using as spiritual authority.
I was about to say, it sounds like you either need to stop doing it or do it twice as much.
I know. But no, I think the
fire is Sethian. Were you doing a typhonic work?
No.
No kidding.
Yeah, it was, but I got the message. So I'm going to try and approach that from a different angle. And I think the Egyptian incantation that you just read is a very good middle ground.
Yeah.
To declare yourself and to clear yourself.
I think there's so too. And what's funny is to read this stuff, it's almost transgressive to declare your worth nowadays, because there's a great emphasis nowadays on talking about how we're not able to do, sort of excusing ourselves. I can't participate because of this. I can't be held to the same standard because of that. There's a sense of, and even if you don't come from a strong Christian background, which intentionally inculcates a sense of being unworthy, there's just a sense nowadays to proclaim your worth in any way is often transgressive, it's arrogant, you're setting yourself up for a fall, it's foolish, it's untrue, it's you trying to posture or pose, flex, strut, whatever. And typically people who do that, who declare themselves competent or talented or whatever, set themselves up to be attacked, canceled, insulted, criticized, whatever. But we're talking about a private environment It's one thing not to brag around other people, you're great at something, but all of us should own that within our realm of influence, my life, that I am the Lord of my life, that I am the author of my book, that I'm the main character in my movie. And a lot of people don't feel that way. A lot of people feel like extras in the movie of their life. A lot of people have been diminished, undercut, insulted, abused, coerced, manipulated, gaslighted, made to fear and hate themselves to the point that every time they look in the mirror, they feel nausea. And every time they try to articulate what they want, they don't know. It's not that they don't know how to get it. They don't know what they want because they're so out of touch with who they are and what they love and what they're passionate about and what excites them and what interests them and what intrigues them. And a lot of people don't know. They've stopped listening because they don't value what's inside. And these spells are meant to reverse the course of that river. The Chicago River used to flow north from St. Louis to Chicago, bringing up all the industrial waste from St. Louis to Chicago, poisoning the water. Through a series of incredible industrial engineering, they reversed the course of the Chicago River. So now all of Chicago's garbage goes down to St. Louis.
Great.
And the pure water from Lake Michigan flows into Chicago, has some of the best drinking water anywhere in the Midwest. And that's what these spells are meant to do. They're meant to reverse course of that sort of current of self-hate and self-doubt, and that a lot of us intuitively believe in, even if we don't articulate that. By constantly articulating, I am great among the gods, I am feared by lesser spirits, I am other demons and deities are in awe of me, gods themselves extend their hand, I'm greeted with joy, entering the field of the blessed.
Just to say the words changes your hardware. Those synapses in our brain, that tree rearranges itself every time we watch a movie, read a book, or say a word. And that's why, even if you don't believe it, if you say the words, I'm ugly, there's a part of you, there's a part of that internal tree that changes shape to accommodate that as truth. It doesn't have a logical, rational basis. It has an intuitive, instinctive basis.
Not like a charged battery, but like a sequin dress or a disco ball. And that's taken directly, literally verbatim from the coffin texts. And I find that just fascinating. I love that idea.
Absolutely. And I think that we can see certain elements of this even creeping into modern psychology with the idea of stand in the mirror and say these positive affirmations. After a while, you'll start to believe it.
Right.
And something else that if anyone who, I'm sure if they listen to this show, that they probably follow Dr. Skinner. When we say these incantations, when we talk about we as being gods and heroes and kings, King Solomon, Helios, any of these things, the modern inclination is that spirits, because they're spirits, know everything. They know all truths. So you can't lie to a spirit. But that is not how the ancient people believed spirits to work. They don't necessarily know that you're not King Solomon. They don't necessarily know that you're not this god or that god. So you are gambling a little bit about seeing how much can you get away with these great, powerful forces. And I think there's a lot of power in that, and something I think that a lot of people could use in many areas of their lives.
It's well said. There's a sense of performative energy. There is a sense of performative energy. And there's also a sense of telling a truth, but in a mystical way. If someone said, we would have accepted your father or your grandfather for this job, but we're not going to accept you. You're not them. And if I said, I am my father, I am my grandfather. On one level, it's not true. You look at my driver's license, it doesn't have their name. But on the other hand, I'm 99% the same DNA as my father. There is a truth, and I lived long enough with him and know him and accepted his ethos and practice enough, let's just say, that he lives in me. And even if he weren't alive, he would live in me to a degree, in a way that my saying it would have an element of truth in it. And so when we perform these spells and say certain things, declarations of godhood, there is an element by the same token where we are speaking the truth. I won't read the whole thing, but listen to this beginning. This is the beginning of another of these amalgamated coffin texts. Listen to the energy in this piece, okay? I'll just read part of it. I'm a glad-hearted spirit. I have swallowed my shroud. I have shattered my tomb. I have struck Set on the banks of the Nile and bound him fast. No, I will not give away my power. No, I will not give away my magic. Those foes who sought me, found me, fought me. Equipped was I, holding Heka before the great ones of Chem, the first generation, who praised me. Hear me, the fear of me, living in my foes. For I am the morning star. Behold, my knife in my hand, which is steady, my eyes unblinking in my face. My heart protects itself in this place, for I will not be harmed in sea or land or sky. Pure am I, having more spirit than spirits, a double lion, older than Atum, worthiest of worthies. That which is inert I devour. Is it from the abyss? I devour it. Cowering, all serpents flee me, and ghosts avoid my light. They avoid the fiery one, the eye of Ra, which is mine. Divine am I.
Wonderful. That's very powerful. I really felt that a lot.
It's more than just saying, a lot of the PGM spells just say, I am Isis, and they'll give the spell. I'm Hermes Thoth, and give the spell. But this is the root of them. The magician who would have said, I am Isis, would have done prayers to Isis and rituals to Isis and more extended things to Isis. That declaration I just read, to read that in a way that's meaningful and own it privately in your own magic circle, your own room, before your own candle, before your own altar, to have said that, then imagine doing a PGM spell where you say, I am Hermes Thoth, and this will be. It wouldn't be such a hurdle then, would it? It seems you'd say it without a thought. If you could say what I just said with a sense of sovereignty and authenticity and authority, well, then what can't you do magically and spiritually, right? What can't you do?
Absolutely. And one thing that I have been really enjoying is this idea that the gods and spirits that we work with from the PGM and late antiquity, building an altar and having a very personal, dedicated practice to either one or a couple. For example, I have altars to Hecate, Selene, and Pan, who actually does not show up in the PGM.
That's wonderful.
But I'm building one to Helios, and Helios is experiencing a bit of a renaissance right now with,
Yes.
I'm assuming he'll appear in PGM 2.
Oh, yes,
And,
always.
and Jason Miller is putting out a little mini class about
I saw that.
aligning
Yeah.
yourself with Helios. And obviously, Alison Jaskowski's put out her Helios consecration rite from the PGM. So
Yes.
I think, and he is such an accessible God because he is the one that we see every day, most of the time. He's
Right.
not hard to identify with. And I think that his power, you feel it on a nice sunny day, and you feel his absence on a rainy day and dark winter days and things like that. Aligning yourself with these powers, not just in the night that you're doing the spell, but throughout a long period of time. So that way, when you do invoke their names in these spells, it's not foreign to you because you've been doing it on your own for this period of time and building that relationship. So that way, when you really need it, it's there way quicker than if you were just coming at them after never speaking to them before.
Yeah, great example. It's like asking a friend for help as opposed to asking a stranger, right?
Exactly.
And I think Helios is a fantastic one because lots of people intuitively, most of us are drawn to lunar, subterranean, chthonic magic. I think that's natural and normal, especially for our cultural moment. But a lot of us do feel eventually like it'd be nice to balance this out. It'd be nice if there was but most of us, if there's a celestial God, most of us sort of default to, I'm not Christian anymore. I don't feel comfortable calling upon the Abrahamic God, who is the celestial 800-pound gorilla in the room. But Helios is a fantastic choice for a primal, authentic, solar God who is a titan of the sun. And what's great about a titan, as you know, is a titan is the actual force of the universe. So Helios isn't the god over the sun. Helios is the sun, the ball of fire that is the sun, and all the literal and esoteric power emanating from that ball of fire, with all the imagery of sight that comes from it, and enlivening and heartening, encouraging, growth-inducing, exposing, burning, all those facets that are the sun. And you look at ancient antiquity, and Helios is actually related to the witches Kirke or Medea, these witches of classic mythology. And so you're acting directly within an authentic traditional vein of magic when you take up Helios for magical rites rather than the PGM or not. It's a great choice to make. And good for you for doing Pan too. What a vigorous, dynamic, wild power that must be to harness, right?
Well, he was another, I feel very confirmed when these things come to me without me ever having to put out an olive branch first. I was doing research into the dogman phenomena. You know, the Michigan dogman and obviously the Beast of Bray Road in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Then I was doing stuff on the goatman phenomena, which is there's one in Maryland, there's one in Texas. There are these goat horned entities that people see roaming around the woods, and they have a lot of characteristics that when you look at it face value, okay, you might think Satan, but it doesn't actually line up with their attributes at all. Really, they align themselves a lot more with satyrs. When you really look at their action and how they're seen and how people experience them, they have this sort of lustful energy to them. The goatman in Maryland is said to attack teenagers on Lover's Lane. It's a darker, perverted aspect to Pan's character.
Yes.
And then I started doing that research, and then I see that Jeff Cohen is putting out this book.
Yes.
Around the same time.
Liber Orbis. And I've actually got a quick preview of a draft of it, and it's wonderful.
That's so exciting.
It's really good. I can't wait to get. I love Liber Chthoniya, his book on Hecate, and I can't wait to read Liber Forbis. It's going to be fantastic as well.
I know, and especially because having some kind of text to go with your work with Pan, because there's so little on him. He's just this afterthought, this side note in all of Greek mythology. To have this nice little system to work within, it really is helpful.
That's a great suggestion. No, I'm so excited for it to come out and talk about a spirit that could use to have its day, a spirit of vigor, a spirit of all-embracing vitality, a spirit of life and fecundity and potency and with wildness to it. There's a Dionysian element to him, but there's like a natural world element to him. But there's also a mystery. Who exactly is he? It's not entirely clear, but he's got echoes on the horn gods of the Carnunos to other ones. This wonderful sense of primal power, potency, vigor, strength, wildness, and of course, panic.
And I think that our society really needs a little bit of a constrained panic, a little bit more of a structured one to push it towards certain areas that really need it. Because I think it's really widespread and it's affecting too many things all at once. And I think
that. Here's a question for you. Have you ever felt panic in any of your investigations or any of your rituals? Or
absolutely. Absolutely. I've felt panic, especially doing the new moon rites out at the Triple Crossroads. And the last time that I did that, I was almost trampled by a deer in the middle of the night.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I was doing it, and I was actually doing a very specific request for Hecate to... I wasn't really feeling her presence as much as I wanted to in just my day-to-day life, and I made an offering and said, I'm making this offering for you to do this. And as I'm saying her mantra, I hear something running down the path at me, and about 5 feet away from me comes a deer. He sees me and turns and runs to the right.
Octavian, this is insane. But in my book, there's a ritual to consecrate a yinx, a spinning wheel to conjure Hecate. And when I performed that rite in a park filled with woods at a crossroads in the woods, there was a crushing sound. I added the magical name Artemis to the conjuration just on impulse. I don't know why I did it. And while I was halfway through, the people I was with said, someone's coming. I said, what? And all of a sudden, someone turned on their phone and tipped it toward the wall of brush. And this, just like you said, 5 feet away, this doe comes out, freezes, staring at us, just 6 feet away. And then in a flash was racing down the way, my heart pounding in my chest. Oh my God.
And that's
crazy.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because like her association with deer is really just in that one line of her Orphic hymn. And yet it's one of the associations that comes through so clearly in all of my like unexpected interactions with her eminence and her epithets. The deer are always present. And so it really is fascinating to look at all of the corpus of these different entities, because it'll surprise you what becomes apparent in your life.
That great way to put it, that everyone has their own kind of personalized experience of the divine, the epiphanies, the visions, the experiences. And you're so right. One of her epithets is Fawn Slayer. And you get a sense she's both like Artemis, both a huntress of deer, but also someone who runs with the wild things of the forest. And it's a beautiful, and deer themselves are liminal. They're so silent and so swift.
Yeah.
There's something about them. They're so strong, but they just disappear in a moment. They're here and they're gone. They're so alert. They're so fast. They're almost spirit-like in a number of ways.
They really are. Are there any spirits or deities that show up in PGM2 that were not covered or talked about in PGM1?
Oh, yeah. There's all kinds of weird ones. There's a jinn that shows up. There's Imhotep, who had a traditional role as a god of physicians, though he's like Aesculapius. He seems to have been a mortal Egyptian who was deified later, which is unusual for a non-royal. And what's interesting, too, is though he was associated for thousands of years with physicians like Aesculapius, his name actually occurs on the first step pyramid, and it implies that he was an architect. And the first step pyramid of Djoser, was a pharaoh, was the first monumental stone monument in the world. So he seems to be the architect of the world's first major monument. And yet he gradually became associated with the tech of medicine and healing. So we've got spells to Imhotep, which will be really cool. We have a multitude of cool demon spells, totally different brand than this stuff in the PGM. We've got some wonderful stuff about, we've got stuff with the Decans as well.
Oh, wonderful.
I wanted to dive into Decan work because Egyptians, astrology was important to them, and it's not my forte by any strong point, but they did celebrate and observe the Decans, and they were influenced. Babylonian astrology basically moved in at some point early on in Egyptian magical history, and they adopted the Babylonian system. So certainly by the time they have a lot of the same astrological symbols that we recognize today, and they had some of the same correlations, and they had their own indigenous constellations. The Big Dipper or the bear, they call the plow. It chased instead of Draco, it chased, quote unquote, the hippopotamus around the sky. But the Decans were important to them. And every 10 days, there's a new Decan, and the Decan, not entirely benevolent, powers over some aspect of life. And they took them really seriously. And I found multiple spells meant to compel Decans, because for the most part, it was generally believed the Decans screwed us all the time. Like they weren't a bunch of angels just showering rose petals on us. They were like, oh, my chariot broke last week, and I got stung by a scorpion this week, and having, relationship problems this week. That was the Decans. So like to mitigate their effects, you could do magic or have an amulet or a talisman or something like that. So we will be doing, for those who wish to, like Decan mitigating magical workings and observing and naming what Decan of the period it is throughout the year. So that's something new that we're going to be doing.
That's so cool. I think adding the Decans in is a really good choice. And I think because they're this obscure thing in modern times, I didn't become aware of them until fairly recently. So to dig into them in a very ancient context, I think is going to be really helpful.
Yeah, it's new and it's cool. And they're found in the Picatrix and they're found in Agrippa. And they're definitely found in some of these ancient Egyptian stuff. So they keep appearing and they have their place and it's unique. And their epiphanies and their names are strange. And the imagery is strange. And it's not all consistent. Certainly like Agrippa's aren't the same as they differ, the Picatrix. There's differences. And the Egyptian ones, there's a lot of them. We're not even sure what their names are. And they might differ region to region. It's not like the Zodiac 12 signs. It's not like one set hard group. You have to use a little creativity and imagination to patch together a set, but we're going to do it and it's going to be fun. And I love stuff that requires the ritualist to supply some of her own creativity, some of her own personalized take on the material. Because what people come up with is just as inspired and interesting as what they came up with 2,000 years ago. It's really good.
Absolutely. And for anyone who is thinking about taking this course, and I know that you don't have to take PGM1 to understand the context of PGM2. But let me tell you, the Facebook group for both of the PGM1 and I'm sure the PGM2 is going to be amazing because it's going to be filled with practitioners, new and experienced, posting their own experiences, their own innovations, their own adjustments to these works. And it's going to be really inspiring, I can tell, because I was already inspired by a lot of the things I was seeing the first cohort I took. So for people who are on the fence, that's another reason to sign up, is because the community that Jack fosters throughout this whole year, it's really special, and it's one that will remain for a long time.
I'm glad you said that. And it's true, like these are courteous, friendly, low pressure groups where people often make friends. They might find someone just a few miles away from them into the same stuff they are, or they might make friends with someone on the other side of the globe. No one has to participate, but you get the benefit of people saying, oh, I tried this spell. Look at this crazy thing that happened. And oh my God, I wonder if that would work for me. Or, oh, I did this with this incense and it really helped a lot. And it's, oh, I'm going to learn from him. I might adopt that. It's a great way. People share their field reports as they will, when they want. And it's a great way to see other people describing very candidly, like, I tried this, I don't feel like it worked, I didn't experience anything. But then this one weird thing happened the next day. And people trying to figure out, what is the tempo of magic? How does it appear? It's not always cinematic. It's not always like it is in the movies or whatever. And people establishing what their own epiphanies are, their own protocols, the way magic appears on their own body, saying, no, I didn't see anything, but my heart started beating really rapidly during this one set of magical voices. And you say, oh my gosh, like they're not only listening externally, they're listening internally. I wonder what I'm missing when I do that. And it helps me. Next time I do the ritual, I listen to my own body because of what they said. I say, wow, I feel this tingling on the soles of my feet. I never noticed before. Has that always been there? And all of a sudden I start to awaken to my own practice, just because I was inspired by something someone else said. Everyone's cool. I've met the best people through these groups, including yourself. You always share so generously. You've got a great approach. I think people like a lot.
I appreciate that. It definitely comes from a lot of different sources, and a lot of people have influenced me. Obviously, yourself is included in that list. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love doing it, and I love sharing the work and hoping that other people share it, because I like getting inspired by other people too.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on from that, you have your own publishing house that you have been slowly but steadily building your catalog with. So I don't think we really touched on that when you were last on the show. So tell us about how that started and what's going on with it.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you allowing me to shill for my other side gig. Yeah, no, I started my own publishing house. I published my own book, The Hecatian. I've done that a couple times. And I think what I'm eventually going to do is have an unlimited trade hardback that people can buy so that anyone who wants it can find it. Because when it does sell out, some people complain that they didn't know about it and stuff. So I published my own book, The Hecatian. I published this beautiful small collectible slipcase book called Lioness about Inanna, a series of hymns to Inanna. And I published a book by Oriel de Fenestrate called Exegesis, and there's still copies of that at Miskatonic Books. A beautiful book, just brimming with Oriel's art and beautiful stories and plays and hymns and anecdotes and poems and things. And then I published another small slipcased collectible book by Harper Feist called Yo Typhon. And that just came out like a month ago, and that's sold out. And it's a wonderful collection of hymns that she wrote, Harper Feist, to Typhon Set, the adversarial god of Roman Egypt, and who embodies rebellion and revolt and breakage and new creation coming out of the smashing of old forms. And that's been really well received. I was really gratified by that. I'm going to publish, I have a mystery project that's coming to the fore very soon, but it's something I wrote, and it's going to be a work about a Valkyrie. And I'm very excited about it. I'm hoping it's out within the next couple months through Grayle Press, but it's going to have a fantastic commentary by Shawnee Oates. It's really, really in-depth. And it's also going to have some beautiful artwork attached to it. And it's going to be something very different, very Northern tradition, very Scandinavian mythology. So for people who like that kind of thing, as Abe Lincoln said of Ivanhoe, for people who like that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing they'll like. So that's the project I'm working on. This is the first time I've ever mentioned that. It's going to be cool.
That's so cool. Shawnee Oates' work, the Hanging God series, I've only read the first one, but I loved it. I'm very eager to get the other two in that series. So I'm really excited to see some collaboration there and you delving into the northern region.
Oh, absolutely. It's cool to mix it up. And she's wonderful. I'm a huge fan of hers. If anyone doesn't know her, she's the maid of Clan Tubal Cain, and for decades has perpetuated the legacy of Robert Cochrane and his trad witchcraft tradition that came about that was deeply influenced by Robert Graves' books as well as other Celtic and British traditions. And she's the bearer of that tradition and interlaced a magnificent Northern Norse influence into their workings, or at least publicized it. And her books and her research and her in-depth writings and her deep learned approach to the topic is fantastic. She's just wonderful. Yeah, so I was really pleased that she chose to partner with me on this book. So that's cool. That'll be coming out. And then since I love books, but I don't know anything about business, I joined up with someone who's Larry Roberts of Miskatonic Books, who's both a successful businessman, a beloved bookseller, and an accomplished magician, and a great guy, just an all-around great guy. And he and I had been friends for some time, so we did decide to partner in publishing some books. And the first one we did, it was instrumental in me publishing my book this last time around. It couldn't have happened without him. And I'm really grateful to him for that. But he and I partnered with Peter Jenks and published the Thai Occult 2, the latest book on Thai occultism that Peter Jenks and his partner Bon wrote about, publishing the fantastic interviews with these Ajarns from Thailand, talking about the folk Buddhist magical tradition that they practice. And we're about to publish, we're very close to republishing the Thai Occult 1, which has been out for years. And this is the first time we've told anyone this. It's going to be frigging huge, Octavian.
Really?
The book is going to be almost twice the size of Thai Occult 2. It's huge, really high quality paper, hundreds of so many pictures in this thing. For people that never held a copy of Thai Occult 1, just filled with magical lore from Thailand and that Buddhist folk tradition, which is so visceral and mirrors PGM magic in many ways with their spirit work and their necromancy and their authorities and hierarchies of powers and their katas, like magical formulae, and so many ways. It's fantastic reading. It's my favorite grimoire, quote unquote, though really it's a series of interviews with the actual practitioners. But Peter Jenks is like an unsung photographer. Everyone talks about him assembling these books, but he's fantastic photographer. Page after page of these exotic, glorious golden masks, tropical jungles, rising incense, skulls with candles on them, pigs' heads on spikes. This magnificent visual feast of Thai magic, just chock full of them. And we came out with with his help, a really cool deluxe for Thai Occult 2, where the cover was actually an actual piece of corpse cloth that had been used by someone to bury someone who was killed violently and young. And onto that, the Ajarns drew an image of Kali and consecrated it because she has a role in their culture and their pantheon.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like it. It's fantastic. So each book came with its resident ghost, because that, of course, is ghost materia. And as with the PGM, if you take a piece of someone's clothing, hair, whatever, bone, or the Catholic Church, the spirit follows. The spirit is imbued in that, either whether it's a Catholic relic or a piece of a skull in Thailand. And so each book came with a spirit. And we're working up something equally special for the deluxe of Thai Occult 1. We haven't told anyone yet, but it will unbelievably it's going to outdo what we did in the deluxe for Thai Occult 2. It's going to be something that's never been seen before in occult publishing, and it's going to be amazing.
I'm so honored that you would release this information on my humble show. It really means a lot. I appreciate that. I'm very excited for all this. I've wanted to get a copy of Thai Occult 1 for a long time. So hearing this very special announcement is very personal to me.
Yeah, it deserves a place on your shelf. It deserves a place on your shelf. And very soon, too, we'll be putting out an anthology with Larry and I called Triple Goddess about just that. And it will have essays by Shani Oates and by people like Red K. Elders and Robin Artisan and Harper Feist and other people about different takes on that concept. Like Shani writes about the three Norns. There's a triple goddess from ancient times, right? And other people write about the Moire, the three fates, right? And other people write about different takes on this idea of triple goddess. And I contribute an essay about Robert Graves' concept of the same from his book, The White Goddess, published around 1950. So It's mostly like a pre-1950 look at that concept. That should be real cool. So,
That's really exciting. I'm very pumped to read that. One of your other courses just started, right? Hail Hecate.
oh
A new
yeah, Hail
cohort.
Hecate just began.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, can you just go into a little detail about what that's all about?
Oh, sure. If anyone hasn't heard of it, if I haven't talked to anyone ears off about it yet, there's a class we just started called Hail Hecate, Walking the Fork. It's 13 weeks of material, recorded videos. You can watch them anytime. And it's a deep dive into the question of who is Hecate? How was she honored in ancient times? How was she conjured? What is the magic of Hecate? Not just some of the hymns and prayers, but we look at them too, but the actual conjuration. When you're doing sorcery and magic and conjuration of Hecate, how does it work? And the proof of that comes from, surprise, the actual PGM, the Greco-Egyptian magical papyri, which have multiple powerful invocations of Hecate in them, but they work on very specific principles. There's a tech to it. There's a technology, and people don't always recognize it. There's a certain use of epithets or nicknames. Sometimes they recite the vowels. Why do they do it? We look into that. Sometimes they'll narrate part of the myth associated with the god. Sometimes they adopt a god face, saying, I'm a god too. Sometimes they'll recite stuff forwards and backwards, or there'll be magical formula or magical voices, nonsense words that they recite. There's all this different kind of stuff. And if you're not familiar with it, when you look at the spell, you're like, what is all this gobbledygook? Why is it cluttered up with these strange things? But so what we do is break it down and look at the tech and be like, there's a reason for it. There's a reason for everything. And it's artistic and it's performative, but it's also profoundly spiritual. And if you can get your head around it, you can not only do it, use it, perform it effectively, but you can hack it. So you can use those techniques as you like in your own magic using the principles behind them, right? So it's a liberating class too. It's not just meant to be, here's these dusty old classics, let's contemplate them, or maybe occasionally do them exactly as written. If you can jailbreak this tech, then you can incorporate it into your workings in ways that are intuitively, instinctively right to you, based on who you are and what system you're working with. So thanks for letting me talk about it. It's a great class, and it's really fun to look at sources like the Chaldean oracles or first tablets, from ancient wells and graves. And we even take a look at things like Aleister Crowley's Hymn to Her, or Shakespeare in Macbeth. She appears as a character and stuff like that. So it takes an expansive view. And I will say it probably asks more questions than it answers, but that's a healthy thing when we're trying to identify a god.
Yeah, but there are plenty of techniques in that class that I use to this day. And the list of epithets that you give out, it has been extremely powerful in my own personal praxis. This course, as well as all of your courses, the PGM course, and I haven't taken it yet, but the 9-day, are you still giving that?
Yeah, that's a short class I have that basically, for anyone who has my book, it starts with a 9-day ritual to self-dedicate to Hecate and say, I'm going to pursue you and explore you through the rituals in this book. And so I created a series of short videos called the 9-Day Rite, also on the Blackthorn School. All these classes are on the Blackthorn School, to basically provide insight, some context, some encouragement, and talk about the ideas behind it for people who know, where's this coming from? Like, what if I don't do it exactly as here? Is there some flexibility in the system? What's the purpose of this? And the purpose of it, spoiler alert, is to calm ourselves down and take a slow approach toward a series of workings in a way that lets us focus and have the luxury of playing out over time our commitment and our pursuit of something that has no body and no form, but that we slowly are falling in love with. It reminds me of what you just said. Tell that thing, what you just said about the incenses that you did. I was so impressed by that.
Oh, I've taken an incense that is originally by Agrippa, but Jeff Cohn puts it in his book, Liber Chthonium. Mm-hmm. And I had the idea of, instead of just taking those ingredients and putting them all together in one night, to take each individual ingredient, and there's about 8, and consecrate them over a series of nights. So I chose 9. The 9th was a special mix and dedication to something similar, but not exactly the same.
Yeah.
And on the full moon at exactly 3 a.m., was it last night or the night before? I think it was the night before. I put all the ingredients together in the middle of my nightly Hecate ritual. I put them in a jar, and then last night I used it in the actual invocation, call of Akati that I do. And it was probably one of the most physical, visceral reactions I've ever had to an incense. That just doesn't happen. It wasn't like I was summoning anything right then and there, but just burning that incense had such a profound effect on my physical body and also my surrounding area, my own temple room. It just really made me step back and realize how powerful this tech really is.
I love that. Can you describe it all? What was the physical effect? If you were to describe it, what was it like?
It was like getting high. It's the best way I can describe it. It was a very euphoric feeling that started in my stomach and then just branched out to my fingers and my toes and my head. And while I was meditating on this and just sitting with it, the only way I can describe it is my room started to creak as if there was something walking or pacing back and forth behind me.
Wow.
It's a wood floor, and the air was very thick. I could, moving my hand, there was a pressure, an unseen pressure that was there. Yeah, it was a really unique experience that
oh my God.
It's hard to really describe. And I can't say that if you replicate exactly what I do, you'll get exactly what I got. But that's just one of the things of taking older technology, which is consecrating each individual physical aspect of your upcoming ritual.
And not only that, but taking the slow approach. I love the fact, the deliberation. You could have done them all in one night, bam, and do the ritual afterwards. But by leading up to, by deliberately spacing it out, giving each ingredient its own night to be consecrated, stew in its own magical juices, to lead up to that ritual, I don't think it's a coincidence that you found the air just thick with power and presence and felt the actually experiencing phenomena and real numinous quality of another being in attendance. I think that's wonderful. And what a generous act too, to let it play out over 9 days instead of rushing it and doing an abbreviated thing. To me, it's no wonder that had effect. What an inspiring description.
And the tension throughout those 9 days leading up to the full moon made it feel like such an event. It made it feel so hyped up that it really showed to me that patience is not only a virtue, but it's a power that when yielded correctly, can really shake up a lot of things.
Patience is not only a virtue, it's a power. I should have that tattooed on my chest. Oh my God. What a great quote. I've never heard.
That's all me. That's all original. So I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Jack, this has been an absolutely fantastic talk. I am so excited for all these upcoming projects. I cannot wait to have you on again to talk about these new books that you're putting out, and everything that you do, I follow intently. And I think everyone else who listens does as well.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure, Octavian. I can't wait to talk to you again. Thank you for making time. It's wonderful to chat about this stuff.
My pleasure. Thank you for coming on. You have a great night.
You too. Take care. Bye.
That was our interview with teacher, magician, and author Jack Grayle. Always love having Jack on and cannot wait to have him on again to talk about all the new things that he is releasing very, very soon. There will be some new content coming to the show, especially across all of our social media accounts. If you are not following them, you can follow them in the links in the show notes. The show notes also will include links to the Blackthorn School, all of Jack's classes, and many more. That's it for tonight, and as always, we will see you again in the Strange Dominions.